10 theories, experiments, and systems that reveal how knowledge can fail. This countdown moves from number 10 to number 1, with each archive leading into the next. We begin with polywater, when science went wrong. Polywater was a hypothesized polymerized form of water that was the subject of much scientific controversy during the late 1960s, first described by Soviet scientist Nikolai Fedyukhin. By 1969, the popular press had taken notice of Western attempts to recreate the substance and sparked fears of a polywater gap between the United States and Soviet Union. Increased press attention also brought with it increased scientific attention, and as early as 1970 doubts about its authenticity were being circulated. By 1973 it was found to be illusory, being just water with any number of common compounds contaminating it. The flawed assumptions around polywater lead to cold fusion, where confidence again outrun the available evidence. At number 9, cold fusion, when science went wrong. Cold fusion is a hypothesized type of nuclear reaction that would occur at, or near, room temperature. It would contrast starkly with the hot fusion that is known to take place naturally within stars, artificially in hydrogen bombs, and within prototype fusion reactors, all of which occur at temperatures of millions of degrees. It is also distinguished from muon-catalyzed fusion. There is currently no accepted theoretical model that describes how cold fusion could occur. In 1989, two electrochemists at the University of Utah, Martin Fleischmann and Stanley Pornce, reported that their apparatus containing heavy water had produced anomalous heat, excess heat, of a magnitude they asserted would defy explanation except in terms of nuclear processes. The flawed assumptions around cold fusion lead to phlogiston theory, where confidence again outrun the available evidence. At number 8, phlogiston theory, when science went wrong. The phlogiston theory, a superseded scientific theory, postulated the existence of a fire-like element dubbed phlogiston, contained within combustible bodies and released during combustion. The name comes from the ancient Greek phlogiston, burning up, from phlox, flame. The idea of a phlogistic substance was first proposed in 1669 by Johann Joachim Becher and later put together more formally in 1697 by George Ernst Stahl. Phlogiston theory attempted to explain chemical processes such as combustion and rusting, now collectively known as oxidation. The theory was challenged by the concomitant mass increase and was abandoned before the end of the 18th century following experiments by Antoine Lavoisier in the 1770s and by other scientists. The flawed assumptions around phlogiston theory lead to luminiferous ether, where confidence again outrun the available evidence. At number 7, luminiferous ether, when science went wrong. Luminiferous ether or ether, luminiferous meaning light-bearing, is the formally postulated medium for the propagation of light. It was invoked to explain the ability of the apparently wave-based light to propagate through empty space, a vacuum, something that waves should not be able to do. The assumption of a spatial plenum, space completely filled with matter, of luminiferous ether, rather than a spatial vacuum, provided the theoretical medium that was required by wave theories of light. The ether hypothesis was the topic of considerable debate throughout its history, as it required the existence of an invisible and infinite material, with no interaction with physical objects. The flawed assumptions around luminiferous ether lead to biosphere 2, where confidence again outrun the available evidence. At number 6, biosphere 2, when science went wrong. University of Arizona Biosphere 2 is an American Earth System Science research facility located in Oracle, Arizona. Its mission is to serve as a center for research, outreach, teaching, and lifelong learning about Earth, its living systems, and its place in the universe. It is a 3.14-acre, 1.27-hectare, structure originally built to be an artificial, materially closed ecological system, or vivarium. It remains the largest closed ecological system ever created. Constructed between 1987 and 1991, Biosphere 2 was planned to experiment with the viability of closed ecological systems to support and maintain human life in outer space as a substitute for Earth's biosphere. The flawed assumptions around Biosphere 2 lead to Stanford Prison Experiment, where confidence again outrun the available evidence. At number 5, Stanford Prison Experiment, when science went wrong. The Stanford Prison Experiment, SPE, also referred to as the Zimbardo Prison Experiment, ZPE, was a controversial psychological experiment performed in August 1971 at Stanford University. It was designed to be a 2-week simulation of a prison environment that examined the effects of situational variables on participants' reactions and behaviors. Stanford University psychology professor Philip Zimbardo managed the research team who administered the study. Zimbardo ended the experiment early after realizing the guard participants' abuse of the prisoners had gone too far. Participants were recruited from the local community through an advertisement in the newspapers offering $15, equivalent to $119.25 in 2025, per day to male college students who agreed to participate in a psychological study of prison life. The flawed assumptions around Stanford prison experiment lead to Milgram experiment, where confidence again outran the available evidence. At number 4, Milgram experiment, when science went wrong. The Milgram experiment is, in the early 1960s, a series of social psychology experiments that were conducted by Yale University psychologist Stanley Milgram, who intended to measure the willingness of study participants to obey an authority figure who instructed them to perform acts conflicting with their personal conscience. Participants were led to believe that they were assisting in a fictitious experiment, in which they had to administer electric shocks to a learner. These fake electric shocks gradually increased to levels that would have been fatal had they been real. In the first version of the study, the learner could be heard banging on the wall at 300 volts and 315 volts and then falling silent. The flawed assumptions around Milgram experiment lead to Tuskegee syphilis study, where confidence again outran the available evidence. At number 3, Tuskegee syphilis study, when science went wrong. The Tuskegee study of untreated syphilis in the Negro male, informally referred to as the Tuskegee experiment or Tuskegee syphilis study, was a study conducted between 1932 and 1972 by the United States Public Health Service, PHS, and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, on a group of nearly 400 African American men with syphilis as well as a control group without. The purpose of the study was to observe the effects of the disease when untreated, to the point of death and autopsy. Although there had been effective treatments to reduce the severity of the disease since the 1920s, the use of penicillin for the treatment of syphilis was widespread as of 1945. The flawed assumptions around Tuskegee syphilis study lead to Unit 731, where confidence again outran the available evidence. At number 2, Unit 731, when science went wrong. Unit 731, Japanese, 731, Hepburn, Nanasanichi Butai, officially known as the Manchu Detachment 731 and also referred to as the Kamo Detachment and the Ishii Unit, was a secret research facility operated by the Imperial Japanese Army between 1933 and 1945. It was located in the Pingfang district of Harbin, in the Japanese puppet state of Manchukuo, now part of northeast China, and maintained multiple branches across mainland China and Southeast Asia. Unit 731 was responsible for large-scale biological and chemical warfare research, as well as lethal human experimentation. The facility was led by General Shiro Ishii and received strong support from the Japanese military. The flawed assumptions around Unit 731 lead to monster study, where confidence again outran the available evidence. At number 1, monster study, when science went wrong. The monster study was a non-consensual experiment performed on 22 orphan children in Davenport, Iowa in 1939 about stuttering. It was conducted by Wendell Johnson through the University of Iowa, with the physical experiment being performed by his graduate student Mary Tudor. Wendell Johnson, a former student at the University of Iowa, dedicated his life's work to identifying the causes of stuttering and discovering a cure. Johnson, who had a severe stutter himself, wanted to understand where it originated and how it could be stopped, largely because he had been teased throughout his life. That was top 10 times science went wrong. Every story in this countdown began as a shorter archive, but the connections only appear when the files are placed together. Subscribe for the next collection.